All right. Anyway, we are almost come to the last two chapters and chapter 9, and it's a big subject. But I think firstly I need to say anyway we back to the chapter. We're still discussing the book or the Foundations of Buddhism written by Rupert Gethin, and now we come to the chapter 9 on the Mahayana, and of course this that in English usually translates as a Greek vehicle. And it certainly is one of the really big subjects, and also if you really have to collect all these Mahayana Buddhist texts, either from the Chinese language or either from Sanskrit, as well as, even though we don't have much Sanskrit now, but or some other actually you do find in Afghanistan and other countries what we call this like recension. And as well as that, of course, in Tibetan language, and then certainly it's really a lot of texts are there. So, in other words, I mean, if you want to understand the Mahayana in really like the scholarly, when I say scholarly, it doesn't mean scholar have to be very careful whatever they say. It's not belief system. It's really like they have to study literature and everything. They have to try to find everything from different evidence. And to say something, that's what we call the scholarly. But it doesn't mean that all the time scholars say something are true, but that's one thing that we definitely know for sure they try their best. Okay, they are not just saying that we just study like many years and they just say something. No, they have to at least study for 10 years and 20 or many languages, and so that they come up certain understanding. So at least it's a good reference for us. Anyway, now I think that I have to say one thing just about Rupert Gethin. At least even this book may not satisfy for people who are in favor of Mahayana Buddhism. However, at least he have really a good sum up, and for people who have a might be easier way to understand if they have no. Especially when you are not very biased on what you think that should be, but you could be more objective. That it could be one of the good guidance. It doesn't mean that they cover all the pictures, but at least it's one of the good guidance. Anyway, now we come to the chapter 9. The chapter is called the Mahayana, the Great Vehicle. And then we have the subtitle, The Beginning of the Mahayana. Okay, the beginnings of the Mahayana. So you want to start to read the first paragraph?
The production of Buddhist sutras or texts claiming to be the word of the Buddha is something that continued for many centuries after the death of the Buddha. Although different schools of Buddhism gradually developed a sense of defined collections of scriptures having the authority of the word of the Buddha, the notion of the fixed canon seems to have remained somewhat loose. As the history of Theravada Buddhism in Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia illustrates, even where there exists a defined canon, it is quite possible for non-canonical sutras to continue to circulate and be used. But around the beginning of the Christian era, there began to emerge scriptures that challenged certain established Buddhist teachings and ways of understanding, and which advocated what is represented as a superior path of practice leading to a superior understanding.
All right, okay. In this paragraph, certainly even if you nowadays, especially when I still doing my research in Europe and that time, so one of the really like a hit topic is about the word of the Buddha. How you understand mean by 活说 in Chinese mean the word of the Buddha. Because for sure, none of the Buddhist scriptures say this is not from the word of the Buddha, right? And then, of course, there might not be a question. Actually, it did have a question even during the history in China too. So when Daoan, during the 5th century, 420-something, and he was certainly because the Lost Sutra was translated into Chinese. And I want to add this up because this is not basically because Rupert is not reading, Prophet Rupert is not reading Chinese, so that I can add something. They even have the same question. How do you prove this? The so-called, how would you say this is really is a sutra or the apocryphal? Apocryphal means the Wei Jin is not really the real one. So, and it's a daunting job for them. And even now, even those, there were certain sutras for sure in the old day in China, Some they kind of know that or suspicious or highly suspicious they were apocryphal texts still been included in the catalog of the Chinese sutra because they were too popular. You don't want to deny it, and then you don't want to mess about with the people. They were angry with you, right? So anyway, those are the lots of things that, and even in that respect, nowadays even in a scholarly study, actually sometimes among the scholars, or when either you're monk or not monk, it doesn't matter. I mean, you studied in Buddhism field. I mean, of course, you need to even how to decipher what is apocryphal, what is not. And if you find it as apocryphal too, and are you dare to talk it, or maybe you just want to just say a few lines on some other places, you know. Anyway, that's one other thing. But here, what I want to say is, please remember, especially when you study reading in Buddhism, in the scholarly field, certainly, the word of the Buddha is always, even either, but certainly this is certainly has been aware in a long time, because in Abhidhamma literature or any literature, they try to tell you also, say, this is the word of the Buddha, okay? So you can come to understand most of the texts, or even people either they were trying to remember that what their master told them, they must first directly or indirectly telling you that is the word of the Buddha. So that's why he put this line here. Then you understand. Just make sure to understand this part. And other way Chinese way usually do that is the way to prove that the word of Buddha is to tell you that if we don't have this text anymore, then the Buddhism will go. That is another way, which is not directly, but actually maybe some very powerful in the faith-based kind of religion. Like how you determine, how do you say that the Buddhism itself, like the Buddhist teaching itself, or the Buddha's word will gone because this text is lost. So that's actually is one of the powerful way to keep people thinking that's really the Buddha, or maybe his last word. That's the most important what he's trying to say. Okay, all right. Let's. If you have question or comment, you can talk later. And now we come to the second paragraph. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
The defining idea of the vision of Buddha's teaching presented in this sutra is one that I outlined at the end of chapter 1. The superiority of Gautama's awakening to that of his disciples. Gautama's awakening is characterized by the perfect development of all spiritual qualities, and as such, it exists the accomplishment of his disciples. The path followed by Gautama is thus the Mahayana, the great vehicle, or the vehicle of the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattvayana.
No, Bu is Bo.
Bodhisattvayana. Ending in the perfect awakening of the fully awakened Samyak Sambuddha, as opposed to the inferior vehicle, Hinayana, the vehicle of the disciple, Shravakayana, ending in arahantship.
Okay, I guess. And I did say that also the word usually we say the Gautama Buddha, it's the very Sanskritized way of saying, or Pali way of saying, okay? I mean, even sometimes when you write a Buddhist, for example, if you're going to write a Buddhist article, if you write the word means Sakyamuni Buddha, we certainly know you never study scholarly Buddhism, but you maybe just study from your own country. In a way, mean like maybe in a only that medium, like a Chinese medium or Japanese medium. But if you really are going to like an English medium, so usually we don't say Sakyamuni Buddha, and the way even though it's very popular in Chinese medium, but you always just say Gautama Buddha or the Buddha, you don't have to say the Gautama. Please remember that part, but also don't be too surprised sometimes when you read an article they write Gautama Buddha. Okay, I guess it certainly has highly to do with the culture in Chinese, because we like to say the father's clan, Sijamoni, father clan, rather than in Indian culture or those culture they use mother's name. Gautama is the mother, the Buddha's mother. So that's the reason why culturally is different. In Indian culture, you always have to retain, even though they have the father's surname, clan, and then they also have to put the mother name there too, So, yeah. Okay, So that's if you see that I did mention I think in the past, but in case you didn't join in the class, like in the very beginning of the reading of this book. All right, and then you know that there was certainly there's a path called a Mahayana, and then there's a path called the Bodhisattvayana, and also then there's a path called Hinayana, and sometimes in a more general way, or you could say that less what do you call let me throw it away, like less like degrading, you know, the other way you could just call that Stravakayana. Okay, so all right, yeah, and then so the next reading.
The dating of the earliest Mahayana Sutta, like that of all ancient Indian texts, is extremely problematic. The earliest firm date we have for their existence is the late 2nd century Common Era, when a number of Mahayana Sutta were translated into Chinese by Lokashema. Many Mahayana Sutta, as we have them, show evidence of a particular kind of literary history. An older core text is expanded and elaborated. Thus, the sutras translated by Lokashema originated possibly a century or so earlier in India. Most scholars push the date of the earliest Mahayana Sutras back into the 1st century before BCE, before Common Era. But the production and elaboration of the Mahayana Sutras certainly continued for a number of centuries. For their part, however, the Mahayana Sutras present themselves as teachings which, having been originally delivered by the Buddha himself, were not taught until the time was right.
So, okay. And the next one, anyone, next paragraph?
Modern scholars have sometimes sought to connect their production with a particular area of India, either the south or the northwest, but the evidence is problematic and inconclusive. Following the lead of certain later Mahayana writers themselves, some modern scholars have also sometimes traced the origin of the sutras to a particular school of the ancient Sangha, namely the Samgikas. But more recent scholarship tends to stress the fact that Mahayana was not in origin a sectarian movement. Rather than causing a schism within the Sangha, Mahayana teachings were esoteric teaching of interest to small groups of monks from various of the ancient schools. Again, while earlier scholarship has tended to represent Mahayana as a movement inspired by popular lay religiosity and stupa worship, more recent scholarship has suggested that we might see the origin of the Mahayana in the activity of forest-dwelling ascetic monks attempting to return to the ideas of original Buddhism. Other writers have also connected the rise of the Mahayana with the growing part of the book.
Okay. Let me just see whether. Yeah, why don't we just read the next paragraph? Finish this, this.
Should I just read it? Because it has a lot of interesting Sanskrit words.
Yes, you should read it.
Okay. The most important Mahayana sutras can be conveniently grouped according to the characteristic idea they expound. Sutras setting out the stages of Bodhisattva path, the Bodhisattva Pitaka or Dasha Bhumika Sutta, the perfection of wisdom, Prajna Paramita Sutra. These are among the earliest Mahayana sutras, and the earliest is probably the Astasahasrika.
No.
What?
Sahasrika.
The perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines. The characteristic teaching of this is emptiness of dharmas. The idea only Vaishnapi Matra Sutta. These sutras introduce the idealist doctrine that mind, idea, or information, Vaishnapi.
No, Vinyapti.
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 Vinyapti alone is real. The most important early sutra is the Sandinimojana Sutta.
Sandinimojana. The mo is a long vowel, so Sandinimojana. Yeah.
But its teaching along with associated theory are found developed in the next group of sutras. The embryo of Tathagata Garba Sutta. The
No sutta, it's sutras.
sorry.
Slowly, it's okay. Sutras.
Okay, the Tathagata Garba Sutra, Mahaparinirvana Sutra, Lankavatara Sutra, Sri Maladevi Sinhanada Sutra. Two sutras of particular importance in East Asian Buddhism are the Sadharma Pundarika Sutra, Discourse of the Lotus and True Dharma, commonly referred to or simply as the Lotus Sutra, which expound the notion of one vehicle, and the Buddha Avatamsaka Sutra.
No Sanka, Avatamsaka.
Saka. Avatamsaka.
No Saka, Saka.
Saka.
No. The R in is a short, yeah.
Okay. Avatamsaka Sutra. Incorporating the Gandhavya and Dashabhumika Sutra, which develop the notion of the interpenetration of all phenomena. The parent sutras, the smaller and larger Sukhavati Vyuha Sutra, and the Amitabhyu Dhyana Sutra. These sutras describe the pure of the Buddha of boundless light and become the basis of pure school of East Asian Buddhism. Meditation Sutra, Pratyuhana Buddha Samyukha.
No Samyuka, Samukha.
Samukha Vastikta.
Actually, you have to read it Samukha Avastita.
Samukha Vastikta
Okay.
Samadhi Sutra. And the Samadhi Raja Sutra.
Mm-hmm.
And Suragama Samadhi Sutra.
Mm-hmm.
These sutras describe particular meditation practices. Such a list indicate not only in outline the nature of scope of a few of the most important Mahayana Sutra. Let us now turn to the summary exposition of the ideas articulated in these sutras and the related expository manual or sastras.
Okay. Now, say whether you have any comment and any question or what. Yeah.
Mindful.
Anyone read all these sutra?
No.
You have to, okay? Those are the very basic Mahayana Sutra. This is why I always joke with the people when they read the Mahayana Sutra, they only just read one or two. No, those are in terms if you study Buddhism, those are the most basic sutra you have to read. So anyway, or anyone have read any one of them? You have finished all the Lotus Sutra? So at least you read some part of it, yes. But I mean, the other part might be Chinese know well is the Pumenpin, the Avalokitesvara, so section on Avalokitesvara. Yeah, that is one of the chapter from the Lotus Sutra.
I think I might read one of the meditation manual, but I'm not sure that's the Sanskrit word.
Which one you read in Chinese? Yeah, that's the one. Patupana Buddha Samukha Vastita Samadhi Sutra. That's the Brojo Sami. Yeah.
And the other one by I don't remember the name.
Okay, all right. Any other? Anyone read the Mahayana Sutra? Any of them?
This is I'm reading some part of the Bhagavad.
Yeah, the Lotus Sutra. That's all? How about Chinese? No, I'm sure you have read one. The smaller Sukhavati Vyuha Sutra, that's called, okay? And it's very popular, the one about a Buddha called Amitabha. Or so.
Yeah, the short one.
the short one. So it's very common, especially in the chanting. It's particularly when the people pass away. So when you go as a Chinese tradition, or you could say even it might be in Korean, but Japan nowadays they do it in the past, but now it's too long for them to chant and it's too expensive to chant for that. So anyway, and I was told, I don't know how far it's true, but and then that's you have to chant the sutra, is the Dhammadipa Sutra. Maybe sometimes they call that Dhammadipa Sutra, but in Sanskrit it's Sukhavati Vyuha Sutra. Yeah. So Dhammadipa is not really the name sutra, but people just put it like commonly called that way, you know. But you know, when you study in a really Buddhism, you don't tell people Dhammadipa Sutra. They think, what are you talking about? You know. Okay. Any other? Any other question and comment? No. If you know, we can go on. Okay, we go on first. I mean, there are lots of things to talk about if you're interested. Yes.
In Pali, does it have Amitabha?
No. No. This is why this is why we call it Mahayana.
The reason I'm asking because a lot of this vocabulary has Pali and Sanskrit.
No, those are the Sanskrit, not Pali at all. But some language of Pali and Sanskrit are the same. For example, of course the name will be the same, and some especially name are the same. But no, it's like sutra is the Sanskrit, sutta is the Pali, S-U-T-T-A, sutta. But sutra is the Sanskrit, you know. Yeah.
Amitabha does not have Sanskrit version.
No, I have Sanskrit version. You found it.
Oh no, Pali.
No. But here, none of them in the Pali. If they are in the Pali, we don't call that as a Mahayana already. Understand? When you say it's a Mahayana text, it means it's definitely not in the Pali. Okay. Yeah.
Do we have any idea about the sequence of development of those sutras?
Well, actually, there are lots of, yes, whenever you study, do the research, you definitely need to find it out. Even sometimes we have no conclusion, but we certainly, somehow by many way, archaeological way or whatever, and then they do, roughly they must guess. And also especially who translated also. So for example, I think he did here in the earlier time he mentioned that, let me see.
I think the motive.
Yeah, he did say that the sutra was somehow like, after the 2nd century, right? But then some even actually wanted to date it back, even maybe just around the century. So it means before Christ or just about after the Christ, meaning just around the century. Yes, and that's why, and if you are really into that research, as I say, is a big subject. And like recently I was reading one by one of the people when he did his PhD in Yale University. That was like 20 years ago. And his research on one of the very famous visualization texts that especially if you want to practice according to the Pure Land school about the Amitabhas. For example, like that, And that definitely for the research you need to try to date it back. Because the text was translated very earlier time. Somehow like the 3rd century, something like that, to 4th century. But then they still trying to date it back how, when that, that's actually the earlier part. When you do the Mahayana research, you need to find, even though you have no any evidence, certainly you have to base on when did it was translated. Now, so far the sources we have is when the Mahayana text was started, because it's based on the time they would translate, and also that you might be found some evidence like archaeological and so forth. That's why even though in earlier time we believe that because what represent the Mahayana is the Prajaparamita, just Borojin. Prajaparamita as they started. However, we know that some portion of the Prajaparamita been translated into Chinese during the 2nd century. So that was a reason why that we thought, in scholarly at least, I understand that the Mahayana text maybe started around that time. Because before that, it seems like nobody was really spread about these teachings there. That's one of the way they found. But then, now recently there's a new discovery, and as I say, I have a paper here, because I don't want to print for everybody, I don't think people read it. The same thing, especially you're not doing your master course or your degree course, or whatever. I don't think you read, but in case you really want to read it in the future, let me know. I can send a PDF file for you. For example, like this is like the new evidence of Mahayana in early Gandhara, written actually just about 2010. I mean, 8 years ago. So because why? Because like this is a new evidence. So somehow it might be changed a little history that we understand the Mahayana. I mean, you could date back a little bit earlier, because if you could find something in the Gandhara period, but that doesn't mean that the literature comes at that time. But certainly that's a way to prove that the Mahayana idea, even during the Gandhara period, it's flourished there. At least there's some ideas going on there, so like that. So those are people who are interested in research on Mahayana. That's one way of doing that. Okay, but we must understand this kind of solar study. It only starts about maybe 50 to 100 years ago. I mean, the longest. I don't think so, but maybe just 40 to 50 years ago. Still a lot of things that need to be taken out. But in the old day, and when people study Buddhism, nobody was really interested in this kind, and nobody would like to challenge that too. Yeah. And always, if you want to challenge that, it was being criticized. You may be kicked out from the school or so. But you know, we live in a modern time, a different time already now, and then we have a lot of technology sometimes, or even the skill that we could actually try to take it out. You know, when the Mahayana Sutra was started, and so forth, which sutra was come earlier. And so, I mean, this is a big subject to talk about. I mean, what I want to say is that unless you really study Buddhism, then, you know, there's a methodology, you know, telling you how you should do the research, and, you know, what is that, how, and it's not because of what they say. Sometimes you have to also know when the people writing a paper, these people reliable or not, you know, whether they really have a good background, you know, like that, you know. So the same thing when you buy, if you're really into that good in the subject, it's not like, oh, you know, somebody write about that. You know, nobody cares sometimes because they are not really good. Like, you know, you must also make sure that people are really having that very good ground or understanding with the methodology and so forth. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have attended to many Dhamma talks with the Vihara Society in the 16th Street in DC. Is that the same sutras that the Abhidhamma sutras will be the same kind of?
My understanding of the Vihara Society they teach more like a Theravada teachings.
Yeah, Theravada.
Even though the monk are Vietnamese monk, but am I right?
They are Thai Buddhism is
Thai.
what we.
I think the Vihara, the Vihara Society we were there once, I guess.
So that would be kind of this basic sutras.
I don't think if they are Theravada, they don't read Mahayana Sutra.
Oh, okay.
And the Theravada have a really different perspective on Mahayana. They do because it's not in their text at all. They would not really use it, you know. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
That the pure land concept and so on is only pure Mahayana's
Yeah,
idea.
you never have in a Pali text, never. And what I want to say the Theravada, that's why some people don't like this book if they're really very, very strong Mahayana. But we are not here to say that what you're based on. You have to be in the general picture and understand what is meant by the main Buddhist teaching. And then some other idea come actually here to say kind of revolution, or maybe sometimes thinking that they are not explained good enough as the what we call the early Buddhism described. Or some actually, they might have a different thing even, saying that this is also taught by the Buddha, so that you didn't recall it there. So, right. Yeah. As I say, whatever you notice here, Sutra mentioned here, never in the Pali.
That concept is not even there.
No, not even there, yes.
So based on what you just mentioned, because even within the whole category of Mahayana, there seems to be a lot of different ideas and a different area they want to focus on. So
That's what we come to the next chapter.
It's almost like it's like enhanced study of specific subject in a certain way. And
No, I think this is one in the next chapter. What do you want to? Yeah.
I just wonder is that why do we group it all together as Mahayana?
No, the thing they call themselves Mahayana, we didn't group it.
Oh, they did.
You have to say, maybe this is my conjecture, is I guess when Mahayana arise, and they become a really predominant kind of school in India, and somehow Maha is always the word show I'm the best, right? Not better, I'm the best. There's nothing better than Maha. So every school which might be in favor of thinking that to become a bodhisattva, you know, and also must follow the process of just like what the Buddha did, being a bodhisattva. So they would call themselves as the Mahayana. So none of the Mahayanas say, oh, you know, we don't follow the Buddha, we just want to be Arahant. None of the Mahayanas say that, never. Then they can then call. It's very clear when you say the Mahayana, you don't want to attend Arahant. So mean Mahayana. But even some school encourage to find whatever you like to choose. Okay, some very strong hold that. Okay, if you want to follow, it's fine, but you are not Mahayana. So the Mahayana is kind of really become a really big branch. Certainly in historical, let me just write something, in historical in India. And when I say India, I mean that time including Afghanistan, Pakistan, and also Bangladesh, okay? Not when we say India, not now the Indian land, that time is include those areas. Okay. So in other words, but there's a bodhisattva, I'm writing a Sanskrit word, versus kind of like Arahant, okay. And even the term bodhisattva, to them, it's because if it in the Theravada, to Theravada, the bodhisattva, it's always that's the Pali word, okay? So you could see the difference. When you write bodhisattva, that's a Sanskrit word, okay? So when you have this, and that's a Sanskrit and this is a Pali, and the bodhisattva is always referred to especially as the former life of Gautama, but it's not only, and also before. What is that? In one is the former life of Gautama, or one is referred to his what you call his life before enlightenment, before attaining enlightenment. Okay, you must understand the term bodhisattva in Pusa, or even you translate in Chinese, but in the based on the Pali text, we have not only even in Chinese Agama, Chinese Arhan, or like the Chinese what we call the early Buddhist text, and the bodhisattva Pusa, the term is always either refer to his past life, or either refer to this life and the life before he attained enlightenment, like when he was a kid, when he was a child, when he was looking for, when he was practicing meditation before he attained the Buddhahood. So, but however, when you say that's a Mahayana, it's always the goal is to be a bodhisattva so that they can attain the Buddha. Then they don't want to attain the Arahant. To become Arahant, they want to become a Buddha.
Have you heard, bodhisattva is another word, bodhisattva?
No, bodhisattva, that's the one.
But you haven't heard ever bodhisattva? Because, and mentioning that, because sometimes in the books, when our books, they refer about enlightened beings that decide to stay in this dimension
this
of
is,
bodhisattva.
that's what I mean by the Mahayana.
Is that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just maybe they don't want to write. Sometimes some people forget, like me. Actually, it's not true always have two T, okay? Because don't forget, there's some other scripture might not write two T. Anyway, I don't want to discuss the language now. But generally, sometimes the most common way to use in Sanskrit two T with A, but sometimes they don't, okay? However, it become like, in English sometimes it become a very common term. They don't write two T, they just want to write one T. Bodhisattva, like that. They don't write in a long vowel, of course. And it kind of maybe mixed up with, they thought like a Pali word, and the one T word change it into a verb, you know. Anyway, so Bodhisattva, or Bodhisattva, I don't know how to pronounce it, it's refer to the same thing. But how, as I say in Mahayana, it means someone don't want to be Arahant. And in general term, Bodhisattva mean, maybe nowadays people think the Bodhisattva as a term kind of like people who doesn't want to attain enlightenment, they want to just stay, you know. That is more than a concept. I mean, since we have studied this text, this book now, we must understand what the scripture is about. The scripture usually, when you say the Bodhisattva, in Mahayana refer to somebody who doesn't want to become Arahant, who want to be reborn in a band, born again, and so forth, and many other things. Then they might, then one day they will attain Arahant, Buddha, become a Buddha. But as I say in Pali Buddhism or Theravada, no, the Bodhisattva is always, there's no such an idea for them, according to scripture or the text for the text. They have the only idea Bodhisattva means the Buddha, the Sakyamuni Buddha or the Gautama Buddha, who in his past life, what did he do? Or what, and before he attained enlightenment, that's all.
So in the Southern tradition, that means there's only one Bodhisattva.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But in the Mahayana is everybody can become a Bodhisattva.
No, not necessarily true is that statement, but I know what you mean. But that's not necessarily true. Agree with all the Mahayana school. Yeah, like you say, everybody can Bodhisattva. No, but yes, in general, mean yes, everybody can vow to become a Bodhisattva.
You
Yeah.
vow to be one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then through years,
Yeah.
practice.
Years.
Yeah.
Millions of
Anyway,
explosion of the universe. Then you become Bodhisattva. I think it's a cycle of 30. So once you meet a Buddha, you can become Arahant. You decide not to be a Buddha. I mean, not you decide not to be an
cannot be
Arahant.
Arahant.
Then-
once you go there,
Then you have to
too
go through
late.
training for 30,000 cycles of universe expand and destroy 30,000 cycles.
No, you cannot say too late. According to Kumarajiva, 就是鸠摩罗什，鸠摩罗什，鸠摩罗什怎么来？我常常念学生，什么的神？鸠摩罗什。According to him, no. Even Arahant, if they want to change, he still can vow to be it.
Lotus Sutra say that you can change, but then I think there's other sayings because once you reach Arahant, you are already out there, so you cannot come back.
No. Certainly.
So there's multiple.
No, according to Kumarjiva,
sayings.
no, that's why I want to give the answer. According to Kumarjiva, of course, we are not saying, because that time the Huiyan Fashi, at the time, Huiyan, the one who started the so-called Pure Land School, and he knew the Kumarjiva is well versed. He had all the sources with him, at least in those days. So he asked this question. It's like can Arahant, even later on they want to become a Bodhisattva, could they do that? And his answer very straightforward. He say, if a lay person, anyone, even they are not so powerful as Arahant, they can. Why Arahant cannot be? If he wants.
Suppose the idea that Arahant is already out of the anything, right?
I don't know. I mean, we are not to discuss this content-wise or ideology, but we will just discuss. According to Kumarajiva, we have to trust his word because he's writing, he's not record. He had to write the letter back to the Huiyan when Huiyan was in Lushan at that time. So, and he said that the answer is if Arahant is so powerful, and even layperson, when not like even a noble people who have no any attainment, they can vow to be a Bodhisattva. Why not an Arahant, of course, if they wanted to? Anyway, they have a further discussion about that. I'm not going to give that detail. If you're interested, go back and read that too. Yeah. Yes.
This might not be super related to what you're talking about, but like according to Buddhist sutras, does the universe always go through expansion and contraction? Does it always contract after expansion?
Yeah. But that is also referred to just one universe. We believe in there's so many universes. Or you could say now they call galaxy.
Galaxy?
No. Multiverse. galaxies within a universe.
Like the Milky Way galaxy is a galaxy, but we're in a bigger universe.
Multiverse.
I think I know the Buddha didn't talk about the whole universe thing because that's the endless talking. They does mention about the galaxy, I guess. Somehow like what are they now? They what we call the galaxy.
So galaxies expand and contract?
Yeah. In other words, we believe the galaxy will disappear and appear, disappear and appear. I don't know what you mean by universe. To me, the universe is
like the observable.
No, you cannot observe. No, the universe is vast. There's no. That's why it was always there was a teaching asking the question whether there's the beginning of the universe or whether there's edge of the universe, and the Buddha never answered that question. He thinks that's irrelevant, and it's only come up to our debate. So.
I only ask that because there are some like recent physics research results where by like plotting the graphs and like studying.
I know there are so many theories.
They're saying yeah, the universe is. Before they're like, oh, it depends on something. It depends on the density or whatever. It might expand forever. It might contract and then restart. But recently they're saying, oh, it's going to expand and expand and expand forever, because it's expanding faster and faster.
No, I mean this is all still that the theory is never be fixed, and then they change the theory all the time. This is what the Buddha predict already. Yeah. I mean there's useless to. I mean you could read it, understand it, but this is still it's not the final answer, right? So, and that's what the Buddha was not interested, But certainly Buddhism believes that the galaxy is expanding and contract. In contract in a way means it will destroy. And another similar galaxy, or even maybe a similar so-called, nowadays what we call the solar system, whatever system, that maybe appear again. So, okay, that's all. And this is one of the, actually this is also funny enough is people, if you are really interested to know the answer, how the Buddhism are really gonna have that, if you look on the early Buddhism, it's not enough. You know why? Because one of the Mahayana, they think they offer the answer with that universe thing, with the reply of what the universe is about. Well, not necessarily 100%, I don't know, but depend. They think that they have come up with a solution for that, And that might be, since you were saying about, we are talking about this, about universe, and that is also one of the approach of Mahayana also, that they think they have a better answer. Because since in early Buddhism, the Buddha are not interested to give those answers. Yes. All right, why don't we just read that, and then we can have more discussion. Now we come to the subtitle, the vehicle of the Bodhisattva. Yeah, I'm going to read that. The vehicle of the Bodhisattva.
Okay. That all Buddhism has a Bodhisattva path follows from the fact that all Buddhism knows the story of the ascetic, variously named as Mega, in the Mahabharata, or Sumedha in Pali sources. His meeting with previous Buddha Sipakara, Mega could have chosen to become a disciple of Dipakara and follow the path to awakening, and thus become an Arhat in that very life. If he had done so, that would have been the end of the matter. There would have been no Gautama Buddha, only the Arhat Mega, but he did not follow the path to immediately arhatship. Instead, he chose to practice the perfections, paramitas, parami, and so eventually, many lifetimes, many years later, he became the Samyuksan Buddha Gautama. The reason for Megan's decision is that he was inspired by the compassionate ideal of the Bodhisattva path, having become awakened himself, he would lead others to awakening. The traditional notion of the Arhat is that he becomes awakened and then effectively disappear from samsara. The Bodhisattva, on the other hand, spends many years in samsara, perfecting spiritual qualities and in the process working for the benefits of the sentient beings. Eventually, he becomes a fully awakened Buddha, but only when the teaching of the previous Buddha has disappeared from the world. In choosing the path of the Bodhisattva, Mega thus forgoes his own immediate release from suffering. As an Arhat, in order to become a Buddha and teach the path to the cessation of suffering to other beings.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to read the next one? The paragraph there.
This basic distinction between the career of the disciple and the career of the bodhisattva is thus presupposed by all Buddhist thought. But the earlier tradition tends to emphasize that as far as the fundamental liberating knowledge of the Four Noble Truths is concerned, the Buddha and his disciples are equal. But a gap between the Buddha and Arhat nonetheless exists. We can trace in Buddhist literature generally an increasing tendency to exalt the figure of the Buddha and to dwell in the description of his incomparable virtues and superhuman powers. Lists such as the 10 powers of the Tathagata and the 18 special qualities of a Buddha are common to all Buddhist schools. But with a text such as the Lokanuvartana Sutra discourse on conforming to the world, the Buddha is seen less and less as a historical personality and more as a transcendent being who merely appears to conform to the conventions of worldly existence. And the more this happens, the greater the opportunity for the suggestion that the attainments of his Arhat disciples fall somewhat short of the complete awakening of the Buddha. What is characteristic of the Mahayana vision of Buddhism is the view that the attainment of the disciple falls so far short of full Buddhahood that it cannot be considered as a worthy spiritual goal. Contrary to the traditional formula which states the Arhat has done what has to be done, he or she in fact has further work to do. Thus, for the earlier tradition as for the Theravada today, the normal route to awakening was considered the path of Arhatship, and the heroic path of the Bodhisattva an option for the few. The parting of the two ways of the Bodhisattva and Sravaka is illustrated by the traditional story of Megha. For the Mahayana, however, the path to hardship appears tainted with a residual selfishness, since it lacks the motivation of the great compassion, Mahakaruna, of the Bodhisattva, and ultimately the only legitimate way of Buddhist practice is the Bodhisattva path.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Okay, and any comment?
I mean, Arhat already cut off all the things. How can he be selfish?
Well, I mean, that's because that's, if you answer that question from what the so-called the agama or the Arhanta agama or the Nikayas or even Abhidhamma that shouldn't have those questions. But the thing it is, in the Mahayana text, as I just mentioned here in one of the texts, there are numerous, there are so many. It's telling you in different way already that Arahant, even though attend the Arahantship, but still there's a way to go. And I think we will discuss that a little later because they did mention some of the texts how they say it. But at least, I mean, look at, but somehow, I mean, this is not necessarily because that's how Mahayana comes along. But I like to say this story. And that's cultural part. And that gives you some reflection. For example, nowadays, if we meet any Indian people, that's what we have a problem nowadays. And then they never study Buddhism, what they are, and they don't care. And they think Buddhism come from India. But is that true? In a way, yes, and he was in that land. But they think that anything come from India is under the Hindu, okay? So, and to them, basically, it's, if you kind of believe that way at first, you don't want to really investigate a thing thoroughly. And then since Buddhism will disappear in India for 850 years, right, after the Muslim was conquer India, and they invent something called Purana, for example. And the Purana, according to saying that the Buddha, one of the reincarnation of the god Vishnu. And that's how and now in India, everybody believes that. Yeah. They even go to a Buddhist temple, they worship the Buddha. Why? He's a god. He's a Vishnu god. He's just one of the Hua Shenma, avatar of the Vishnu god. Now, and there's no way you talk. If you say, oh no, this is not a Buddhist way of that, no, he's from our land. So that's what it is. And they don't even want to change his understanding. But I'm telling, since we study Buddhism, I don't mean that you have to hold on don't hold on anything. You want to find the truth. And one way of doing I mean, as a scholarly doesn't mean always offer you the answer, but at least one of the way that open that we cannot like some of the approach like India now they say, okay, he's just one of our God, and we definitely need. Like in India, it's very hard to convince a lot of people unless you really study Buddhism well. They otherwise think, oh, this is he do not believe in no self. I also recently read some article. No, actually, he just say that for fun, There's no way, because all Indian religion believe that, that's. Now we come up this kind of word. Yeah, it's true. I recently, and also there was one other person. I don't know why he write that lots of something and somehow like that, Okay, yeah,
My
yes.
friend who came to Kinabalu.
Yeah, to the meditation retreat.
Her theory is oh, it's been 2,500 years, so something must have been wrong with the way knowledge has been passed down. So he must have said that there was a self, but people just understood it wrong. Just different ways of.
No, this is a problem because they not only rationalization. No, it's not about rational problem. I think he never really studied. In Malaysia, they don't have the environment to study what the theology is about, what the religious study is about. Do you believe that when the people were asked her a question, do you believe that in the old time when there are so many very well-educated background, their father and father and father and father and father were a Hindu. When I say Hindu, I mean to learn the Vedas or Upanishad, all these things, and they can recite by themselves, like Asariputra, Moggallana, Mahakassapa, all this, they recite everything. That's 7 generations. That 7 generations means it's just a way you can trace back your father and your grandfather and great-grandfather, they all are very expert. Not like now, we have to base on book, they can recite it, okay? So that kid, and that's their job. Nothing else they do. Not like now you still have to find the money and get a job. You might be just part-time. No, their whole life is only study that. Then you become a Buddhism, and become Arahant, at least believe that. Okay, become a Arahant. And these people to train this, do you think that nowadays in Malaysia, just go to the college for 4 years and study? No. Come on. There's a problem of them. They don't know in those days how serious they talk about that thing. Okay? You know what I'm saying? Yes.
Comment about the last sentence of this paragraph, that he claims that Mahayana ultimately considered the only legitimate way of Buddhist practice is the Bodhisattva path. I would agree more if he stated that Mahayana predominantly considered the only desirable way of Buddhist practice is Bodhisattva way. I tend to disagree with the wording that Mahayana ever claimed the only legitimate way of Buddhist practice is the Bodhisattva path. There is a qualitative difference.
Maybe I think it's like you say, it's a qualitative statement, but for sure, I don't know the word legitimate. It's how you understand, and I don't know. That may be best to ask him the word. But I'm sure that I'm not here to argue the statement. I don't know that the sentence. When people write, so it could be error. You could say it could be the way he understands legitimate in a sense, not necessarily in different field. Okay, maybe the lawyer really differently, other people really differently too. I'm just saying that. But that's one thing that we must understand. My understanding, even though maybe you could argue with the sentence, but for sure, none of the Mahayanas say we don't encourage people to do practice bodhisattva.
That's for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I guess that's what Because why I want to say that, because he did mention in the Lotus Sutra later on about the one path. I think in earlier time or later on. Yeah. So even in that when he said the Lotus Sutra. So, and that certainly is legitimate. But he didn't mention the other schools say the same way. So, and I want to say that he knows actually there are differences in Mahayana too. But maybe that sentence maybe doesn't cover very well. So, at least from your understanding of the word legitimate, yeah. Yeah, okay. Because I guess the word legitimate, to me, I didn't read it, that's my poor English. I don't think it's wrong because, in other words, my understanding the legitimate is referred to, certainly all Mahayana will encourage people to practice bodhisattva path. That's what it is. Not just desire to.
Yeah. Perhaps it's the context. Under a different context, legitimate would have quite rigid connotation.
Yeah. Okay, right. Shall we read the next paragraph then? So, who next one? Are you? Oh no, I think we do take a break first. We have enough of Mahayana so far, and just take a break, and we can continue later. Well, thank you. Yeah, we come back after break. Yeah.